Season 2 of House of the Dragon just ended, and we have to say it was a huge failure. When you've been waiting for something for a long time and then it finally comes, it's just, that's how this season felt too. The whole season seemed off, not just the ending though, and let's be honest, that was a big part of those feelings. The writing was all over the place, and there were so many problems that George R.R. Martin himself said some bad things about it. Want to find out more about House of the Dragons Season 2? Stay with us till the end of the video to find out, so let's get started. After all the build-up, a lot of fans, including us, were let down by the lack of anything. We had to wait almost 2 years for this season, but here it is. A plot twist that didn't work. It was like reaching the end of a long twisting road and finding only a sign that said, "Better luck next time." This season had a lot of problems, not just the end. There were deep-seated problems, and most of them were caused by changes made by the writers that were meant to make the story better, but made it worse. To begin, this season the blacks were given way too many good qualities, while the greens were almost made to look like the bad guys. The story lost the moral depth that made it so interesting in the first place. It felt like the writers were trying to make us root for one side. Alicent is the next one. Alicent is so sad. They did her a lot of harm this season, and her character was pretty much killed off. As a mother in the first season, she would do anything to keep her children safe. But now, all of a sudden, she doesn't mind giving up the throne to Rhaenyra, and she doesn't mind that her son is being killed either. Where is the fierce and driven Alicent that we knew? These people who wrote about her seem to have forgotten everything she did and fought for. Do you remember how Rhaenys walked into the crown in Season 1? Without giving it a second thought, Alicent protected Aegon. She was ready to die for her boy, and now she's ready to blame him for her old friend? It doesn't make sense. The scene was hard to understand for even Olivia Cook, who plays Alicent. She said she wanted to spit in Rhaenyra's face while the episode was being made because that's what an Alicent-type mother would do. As shown in the books, Alicent is always devoted to her kids. Rhaenyra locks her up, but she stays stubborn because she knows her son Aegon will come back with fire and blood to get revenge. We should have seen that Alicent. Some changes didn't need to be made to the story. Something that worked well with the source material was fixed, but it got broken in the process. The friendship between Alicent and Rhaenyra was the one that suffered the most from these changes. The writers were crazy about getting these two women together as often as possible, but they didn't seem to care much about how they did it. The plot of their relationship was one of the weakest of the season, and it shows how the characters were inconsistent throughout the show. In Season 1, Alicent and Rhaenyra were a pair. Their friendship was one of the best things about the season, but in the story, that happened 20 years ago. It's been a long time since then. They both have kids, made friends, lost loved ones, and oh yeah, hated each other a lot more than they got along. Alicent has pretty much turned Aegon and Aemon against Rhaenyra and her kids, and Alicent lost her child, and Rhaenyra lost her son. Even though these women are not friends anymore, the writers seem to forget that, so they could have a scene where they get back together. Don't even get us started on the story of Daemon. This is so boring. It seemed like we were seeing the same things over and over, and Daemon worrying, Daemon acting without thinking, Daemon taking risks, do it again and again. His story was supposed to be about finding out who you are, especially with the magical Harrenhal arc, but it was just poorly told. The writers had a big idea but didn't know how to make it work, so they put it off until the end of the season. After that, when they finally shared the big picture, it seemed fake. It seemed like Alicent was setting things up all along by waiting until the season's end to tell Daemon he was ready to see these visions. There was no real reason for this. Why now? What changed? We don't know, which is why it seems so fake. But you know what worries us the most? What this whole story arc might mean for Daemon's character in the long run. Now that everything that happened at Harrenhal has happened, he is sure that Rhaenyra is the chosen one, and he loves her very much. But his dedication could make him lose all the rebellious and impulsive traits that make him unique. They should add a twist because otherwise, Daemon might become a shadow of the person he used to be, which would be a shame. After that, there is the Nettles thing. Nettles is a big part of the Daemon and Rhaenyra's connection in the books. She's an important part of their story because it shows their flaws, goals, and even their betrayal of each other. It looks like Nettles will be cut from the show and some of her story will be told through Rhaena instead. The writers have been watering down Rhaenyra's flaws since Season 1, making her seem better and more moral than she is. Rhaenyra is driven and angry in the book, especially since she lost her son Luke. There is no prophecy or big fight against evil that makes her ready for war, and she's only ready because she hates and feels like she's been hurt. On the show, however, they made her into a flat character who only wants to avoid violence and follow her destiny. It makes what she did seem a lot more acceptable than it is, which takes away from how complicated this person is. But making the Greens seem like they're only interested in their own small goals makes it easier for people to root for Rhaenyra. But this makes the story less complicated, so there is no longer any moral doubt. It looks like we are seeing a noble queen trying to follow her fate, but her enemies are just getting in the way. But anyone who knows George Martin's work knows that this story is meant to be about a group of flawed and ethically gray characters, and it's all about how their pride and hate drive them apart and kill thousands of innocent people in the process. There is factual information in Fire and Blood, but it is interpreted and written from different points of view. This makes us wonder if that's what the writers learned from reading it. Did they not get it, since that's how it feels? However, we're not saying that all the changes were bad. There were some great moments this season as well. For instance, we loved how Ellen and Jace were fighting with each other. Character depths like Ellen's anger at Corlys or Jace's worries about being brutal were what we wanted to see more of. But unfortunately, their stories were not told as much as we would have liked or were replaced by other plots we didn't fully understand. And those scenes with Tywin Lannister that were meant to be funny on the trips to Essos? Not at all needed and didn't add much to the story as a whole. They might have worked better in a longer season, but they felt like a waste of time, especially at the end of the season. Instead of focusing on these plots, the writers could have spent more time developing Helena's character and her goals, following Jace's journey in the north, or even giving those side characters, especially those in the Black Council, more depth. During the season, most of them seemed flat and one-dimensional, like they were only there to connect with the main characters, and when they did have a chance to show more, the show just skipped over it. But even with all of these issues, there were still some figures that stood out, such as Aegon. In this season, they made him a more likable figure, which was not simple. They showed that he is not just a spoiled brat, but also a deeply flawed person who is having a hard time with his issues. We liked how they also looked at his bond with Helena and how he's finally starting to understand how important his duties are. They helped us understand him better, even though he's still a bad guy. Even though he got the better, the season as a whole was not very good. A lot of the time, we just didn't feel like we had anything in common with the personalities. The writing seemed forced. It was like the writers were trying too hard to make things happen instead of letting the story happen easily. It was a letdown because the show had so much promise at the beginning. The first season was great because it didn't try to be like Game of Thrones. It was nice that it focused more on the people, their relationships, and the political drama. Now it seems like they're trying to bring back the magic of Game of Thrones when they should have been making something new. That's where we think a lot of the criticism is coming from. After the disappointing last season of Game of Thrones, fans came to House of the Dragon because they wanted something new, but when they couldn't get what they liked about the show in the first place, they were very angry. The writers seemed to be trying to make everyone happy, but they failed, and no one was happy. Since Season 2 was so bad, it's hard to see how things could get worse, but Season 3 will be hard for the writers to fix because there won't be any big fights and the ending won't resolve anything. Do you agree with us? Tell us in the comment section how much you liked or disliked the House of Dragons Season 2. If you enjoyed watching the video, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.